Oh, banger. Welcome back to another episode with Fight Night Picks. As always, we're brought to you by SimBody. Vertiball is now SimBody. If you head on over to their website, simbody.com, you're going to get all the great products that you know and love, including the SimBody Vertiroller and the Vertiball that you have seen most likely here in studio. Look at that. Place it, lock it, attach it, Vertiball, all sorts of great stuff over there if you want to roll out those old tired muscles and you don't want to go with that old lacrosse ball. They're also coming out with that very new product that you can see right in front of you. And if I head on over to my cart, look at that. I've already got a Vertiball over there. Little bit of a deal right there. And if you hit the try for 60 days risk-free, use the promo code FNP, you're going to get 20% off your order with that code FNP at simbody.com. You're really, really helping out another local company here in New Brunswick, Canada. Can't wait for it. The new name, SimBody at simbody.com. And as we always say, let's get into it. And welcome back to another episode of Fight Night Picks question mark kicks. This is the 30K edition. Thank you so much to all of our subscribers. If you haven't checked it out, fightnightpicks.com. All sorts of great content over there. You can find the podcast. You can find some of the merch over at the shop. You can also find our own Joshua Hart's full card betting guide for this weekend's action. He goes through fight by fight, saying best value could end up being Malcolm Gordon in the debut. He also has his own big time parlay up at the end of this. So you gotta make sure you check it out. Josh putting in the work over on the site. And as I mentioned, you can check out the store, check out some of the stuff the boys are wearing. I know Craig Allen, and I know he's gonna be wearing that black long sleeve shirt today. You can also find some of the cool Under Armour stuff, as well as the very, very select few baseball jerseys, if there are even still some of them over there. So as always, find the website at fightnightpicks.com. And as we always say, let's get into it.
Last look at the big card. Be sure to head into the chat and have your say. Let's get into it and join in Fight Night Picks question mark kicks.
My excitement has been lost on everybody because I turned the microphone on, and I'll be quiet, but everybody's filling up that chat saying no audio. I mean, listen, let's bake the algorithm, right, Matt, and fill up that chat. But overall, I'll do it again because I'm so excited. Let's get that 30K going. Thank you. Give yourselves a hand, a round of applause. You made it happen. And now my excitement from silence is my excitement in real life, and you can tell how excited I really am. Now, with that, you're going to have Dana White's Contender Series coming up this year. And that is definitely something to get excited about. Now, again, we got to bake that algorithm. We got to hit it with the comments. We got to hit it with the likes. We got to hit it with the subs. And there's going to be all sorts of great content coming out this year. And you know what? As a special teaser and a treat, UFC 271, it's coming up next weekend. You're going to have a pretty cool comic book style thumbnail that's going to come out for that one. So I'm really looking forward to that card. I mean, you have the debut of what? Blood Diamond coming into the UFC. You've got, some different training partners out there of your two guys in the main event. Whitaker take on Adesanya. But if we look at this weekend, I mean, listen, we have Hermansson, we have Strickland, and everybody seems to be all over the place with the picks on this one because there's a lot of people firmly entrenched in the fact that Jack Hermansson can beat the wheels off of the guy that makes press conferences and weigh-ins so damn weird in Sean Strickland.
Sean Strickland just always has something going on. I don't know if it's good, I don't know if it's bad. I just know that he does have something going on. I think this is a really fun main event, honestly, though. I know a lot of people are sort of looking towards next weekend's middleweight main event, kind of overlooking this a little bit, but let's say Sean Strickland does win tonight, and let's say he is able to win impressively, he is on the short list of people who could be fighting Israel Adesanya next if he is able to beat Robert Whittaker for the second time. And okay, maybe he needs one more fight after this, but still, like, if Strickland is able to get this win, I think it does a little bit more for him career-wise than for Hermansson, just because we've seen Hermansson sort of up and down a little bit at the top of this division. But I think this is a phenomenal main event, and it will be an exciting one. Like, are we going to get a 25-minute striking battle? Are we going to see some grappling? I think this will be a great fight.
Tovan hitting us up in the super chat, just stopped in to show some love to my favorite MMA breakdown media channel. Love you guys. Enjoy the fights. Tovan doing the damn thing over on Twitter. And listen, I think this is going to be a great one. I mean, Michael's saying genius marketing. Maybe it was a mistake earlier. Maybe it wasn't. And Real News hitting us up with that, I don't know, is it a birthday hat with some confetti coming out? I don't know, but Daniel is saying Hermansson for the win. You know, with Fight Night Picks, we're going to start question mark kicks off by throwing it on over to the Fight of the Night screen.
Let us know down below in the comment section who you've got. It's time for the Fight of the Night with Fight Night Picks.
All right, and listen, there was a former male grooming company that found itself in the middle. But listen, if you tuned in thus far and you know somebody that wants to have their ad placed there, there's definitely an opportunity for it. It was a great year with Manscaped. We really want to thank them. But now it's your opportunity. If you're an energy drink sponsor, which we're very, very high on, or maybe you're a Canadian brand, maybe you're a brand in the States that wants to make some moves and start some grooves, you can find yourself in the Fight of the Night screen and throughout the show. But Matt, when we throw it on over to the Fight of the Night screen, Hakeem Dawoodi's taking on Mike Trizano. I think this is a banger.
This is a phenomenal fight. Like, this isn't a main event caliber fight by any means, or a co-main event caliber fight, but if you watch every UFC event, then you're probably really excited for this one. Trizano, former Ultimate Fighter winner, has had some bumps along the way, but we all know how promising of a fighter he really is. And with Hakeem Dawoodi, it's weird. I feel like I'm way higher on him than most people are. I know he's had 2 bad losses in the UFC, or one fairly close one, but still, he is a very exciting talent, and I do feel like he's one of those fighters who, if he could just make 1 or 2 adjustments along the way, he could go on to have a very long and successful career.
And I mean, for Mike Trizano, you saw the fact that in Hakeem Dawoodi's last fight, he struggled with those takedowns early on, and then once Movsar Evloev started to peak and then go over the edge, I mean, Dawoodi was able to come back in that fight. So I think this is going to be a really good one. Trizano coming out of Shulman's. Brian Battle taking on Tresean Gore. Again, this is another one of those fights where people are firmly entrenched in their camps. Like, if you've got Battle winning, you see no avenue for Tresean Gore, and vice versa. But this is ultimately the Ultimate Fighter Season 29 finale that we were supposed to get. Now we finally get it. I like this fight.
Well, that's where we come in. Like, we do have opposing picks in this one, but I can admit, I think Brian Battle has a great chance to win this fight, and hopefully, not to put words in your mouth, but I think you could admit Tresean Gore equally has a great opportunity. I've seen a lot of people on social media say that Gore could be like the next Rumble Johnson. I think that's kind of high praise for right now, I really do, but he is a very promising prospect, and it was unfortunate that we weren't able to get this fight as the actual finale of The Ultimate Fighter, but it is nice that we are eventually seeing it.
Should be a good one. I can't wait for this fight. The Fight of the Night screen, as always, presented by your ad here.
It's like Ernie Johnson's Nito Stat of the Night, unsullied by sponsors since 1987.
Hey, make it happen. Let's get into it. All right, Matt. So we throw it on over to the Fight of the Night card. And listen, you got Jack Hermansson, you have Sean Strickland up at the top. But as you know, with Fight Night Picks question mark kicks, we start at the bottom, then we end up here, to quote Drizzy Drake. And listen, Matt, when I look at this overall card, it's one of those ones that might not make a giant dent in the overall UFC landscape. As far as ranked fighters, there are not a lot of them. But this big-time middleweight main event really does kind of carry some weight. And then if you look through it, a lot of really good debuts that I'm excited about, a lot of good prospects. So let's throw it on down to the first fight of the night. We have Malcolm Gordon taking on Dennis Bondar. And I was excited to see Dennis Bondar finally on the scale for the UFC. Weighs in successfully, because his last fight was a bantamweight. And this is a guy that's absolutely decimated lower-level regional talent over in Europe. I think that is absolutely fair to say. He's taken on some poor opponents, and he's found himself in some bad spots in some of those fights as well. I know we talked about that kind of in the build-up at the start of the week. So if you look at it right here, I mean, Dennis Bondar, he's on a huge heater of a win streak. He hasn't lost in years, which is something that can either come crashing down. I mean, remember when Vitaly Minakov fought Czech Congo? Remember when Czech Congo was supposed to fight Ryan Bader? And he's 46 for a title this year. But the last time that Dennis Bondar lost was in 2017. We talked about it too at the start of the week. My favorite fight to go back and watch, other than Bondar's last fight, was the fight he had against Kewan Jacques, where they went back and forth. Jacques was able to wrestle him a little bit. And that's one of those telling things, I think, in a fight against Malcolm Gordon, who can get it done with his blitzes, get it done with his wrestling. When he's on his back foot, he's not as good. But Malcolm Gordon's one of those guys that's willing to kind of get into that firefight, and that's why I think this fight can be a lot of fun.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Craig, but there is like a 50% chance, I think Denise Bondar could end up kind of like a Nate Landwehr and have a bit of a run like that in the UFC. I think he's a much more skilled fighter, don't get me wrong.
Knocked out by a giant flying knee.
But that's the thing that I do worry about. Because of his aggressive style and because of his success outside of the UFC, I do worry a little bit about him just sort of coming in, having that scorched earth style. Ooh, I'm not really worried about the damage I take versus the damage I give out. And next thing you know, he gets cracked by a big right hand and we're like, oh my goodness, what happened to Denise Bondar? He's 0-3 in the UFC and we never really see the promising talent that we saw outside of the UFC. But they are starting him off against a very good UFC kind of debut for him. For Bondar, what we've seen outside of the UFC, like you said, he's well-rounded, he is aggressive, and he is a finisher too. And Malcolm Gordon has had the susceptibility of getting finished in the past, so if Bondar can start to build, especially early in this fight, I think he can have a lot of success throughout.
Best part in the comment section, Matt, Joe saying, I found nothing on the injured rib. He was injured and out of the tough final, I thought. Andrew Bonifaz is an inside joke. He loves saying that there's an injured rib. It's a Fight Night Picks classic with question mark kicks. It's a lot of fun. But yeah, when it comes down to this fight, I mean, if we have a look at the odds, I always kind of scratch my head, I guess, when a debuting fighter comes in as a pretty big favorite. For Denise Bondar, open to minus 250, minus 287. Malcolm Gordon, open to plus 190s, plus 230. I gotta be completely honest. Malcolm Gordon's been in the UFC for 3 fights. You could forget who Malcolm Gordon was. Like, you really could. Yeah. You look at the first 2 fights, he loses to Amir Albazi by submission. Amir Albazi's a great fighter. Where's he been? Like, I really do like Amir Albazi, but he has no steam right now. And Sumaderji, who, great kickboxer, but another guy that just, he has a great performance, and then he fights Zaruk Adeshev, and it's like, okay, who's that guy? And then for Gordon, he was able to go out there, get the win over Francisco Figueiredo. Maybe Devison's able to avenge the loss of his brother. For Denise Bondar, first time in a year and 5 months. I have Denise Bondar because I do think that he has some of those wrestling advantages, and I really do like the wildness of Bondar on the feet because he's one of those guys that can get wild because his grappling's so good. So for me, I do like Denise Bondar, but not at those massive odds. I'm just going to hang out and watch the fight.
I also like Bondar quite a bit in this fight, but again, in the back of my mind, it does worry me. Like, we've seen these sort of hype trades with a lot of aggression from outside the UFC come over, and then next thing you know, get cracked by a big shot. So I do worry a little bit about Denise Bondar in this one, but I do think he'll win.
Matt Simone, we're Canadians. All right, Matt. So we'll move on to the next fight. We have Jason Witt taking on Phil Rowe, and this is one of those fights, again, it's divided the MMA community. We have the fight picked differently, but we can both admit, like, what these two guys do well and how they can beat each other. Philip Rowe can knock out a horse. Jason Witt can take that horse down and hold it down, like he was on Yellowstone, which is a show that I don't think Matt's still seen. But when we look at this fight, Matt, I mean, Philip Rowe, very crafty on the feet. Thank goodness he made weight, because his last fight he weighed in at 173.5, wasn't able to get any of that bonus money and had to forfeit a portion of his purse. But when we do look at Jason Witt, he's one of those guys, like, I don't know if you saw it, we didn't talk about this beforehand, but the UFC, every now and again on these little cards, they'll put out, like, the promo pack. It's top finishes of fighters on this card, and then you see him finish Cole Williams, and you really think in the back of your mind, is Cole Williams really the best guy to show in one of these? He had a bad run in the UFC, he really did. But when we look at this fight, Jason Witt was able to beat Bryan Barberena by continuously taking him down. Now, it was a majority decision, but at the end of the day, Witt is a classic wrestle boxer. I wish he didn't let his hands go as much as he does, and that's how he can get caught by Phil Rowe. So I can understand why you take Phil Rowe. I take Jason Witt because I like that wrestling advantage, but this is one, it's going to be one or the other.
Oh, without a doubt. It's going to be one-way traffic. Now, this is the problem I do have with Jason Witt, though, because he did beat Bryan Barberena. But is it the same Bryan Barberena? I don't believe so. Not even I don't believe so. The eye test definitely told you that wasn't really the same Barberena pre-injuries, pre all the fight of the night. So
he did win after that, so good for him.
He did, exactly. But still, in that fight, he did look kind of slow to me personally. And with Witt, like you had said, it does come down to, can he get that takedown over and over and over? I do worry about him closing the distance because he sometimes does rush into his own takedown attempts. So that's going to be the big key to this fight. But I'm going to hold firm with Philip Rowe.
It'd be nice to see Philip Rowe, like, step back left hand, drop him. But he's one of those guys, I find, it's almost like he freezes in his fights and he just kind of gets tensed up. Then once he gets up against the fence, sometimes he can throw the upper body. I know when I was watching Blood Diamond tape to get ready for his fight for next week, he kind of does the same thing when he gets backed up against the cage. But like both of those two fighters, they get backed up and held for a long time. Jason Witt's one of those guys. I like the upper body strength. I think he's going to be able to get the takedown. The comments, Matt. Jamal King saying, hey, shout out, boys. I'm from St. John, New Brunswick. What can I say about the Fog City, the Harbor City? I mean, listen.
A lot going on there.
Go Sea Dogs. Mem Cup this year. That's a lot of fun. So, Matt, we'll move into the next fight. We have Jailton Almeida Maladino Jr., and he's taken on Danilo Marques. And I don't have strong feelings either way about this fight. Athletically, Jailton Almeida is on a totally different level than Danilo Marques. Cardio-wise, I assume he is, but we don't really see him late in fights, and that really is the trouble. For Danilo Marques, his cardio evaded him against Kennedy Njokuani his last time out, but before that, listen, he was on a heater of a run. Now, did he take on the best level of competition? No. Is Kennedy Njokuani a very good light heavyweight? Maybe. I mean, he lost that one fight. Now he's kind of good. But when we do look at it, for Danilo Marques, I mean, this is a guy that's trained with Shogun Rua for a very long time. He's been in his corner for a very long time, training out of King's MMA. I'm sure he's probably even, seen Anderson Silva around in California.
Once or twice.
And he spent time at Demian Maia's gym in Brazil. But when I look at this fight, I mean, Matt, Jailton Almeida, his striking, it's like a car crash. His takedowns are like a mixture of Edge from WWE, but when he gets it to the mat, he's kind of like Khabib, because he just bull rushes for it, and I mean that. He rushes across the cage, takes you down, wraps your legs, gets your back. This is one of those fights where, and let's bring up the odds for this one, because I think that really does tell the story, and they're kind of all over the place. Yeah, wow, I was right. Almeida opened a -210. We made the video on Sunday, so he was what, a -316? He's a -416 right now. Where's all the confidence in Jailton Almeida? Because, again, he's beaten Ildemar Alcantara that was in the UFC. He had a win over De Oliveira that was in the UFC, but they were really late in their careers. He beat Nassourdinov that was on Dana White's Contender Series, who looked a lot smaller than I thought he would. And he looked really good in that fight. But, Matt, when I look at this fight, I have Almeida, but, I'm not throwing this as an anchor to a parlay or anything.
I do like Almeida, though, solely based on his possible upside. The Knicks selected a guy named Jericho Sims in the draft last year. You may or may not know who that is. I don't expect most of you to.
I only know Chris Jericho.
But Jericho Sims once broke his nose on the way down from an alley-oop, and he's 7'2". That's the level of athlete that Jericho Sims is. Will he ever play in the NBA? Probably not, but that's just the level of athlete that he is. With Almeida, there are some similarities there. It is that sort of aim big, miss big, more grappling heavy, because normally when we use that term, it involves a striker, but the way that he will crash into his takedown attempts is really nice. But the flip side of that, he does have pretty good timing on his own takedown attempts. He is somebody who will almost rush it a little bit too often, similar to kind of like what you said to Jason Witt in his boxing. It's not that you can't use it, it's just that you should tone it down a little bit. With Almeida, I don't mind his striking, and I do think that with a little bit of time, if he could refine it a little bit, not like I'm trying to send him to a gym, but imagine if we went to Sanford MMA, you see sort of the technical advancements they can make with some fighters who are a little wild. I think he could actually turn into a very promising prospect one day, and I do think this will be the first big step on his journey to achieving that.
Yeah, I mean, both of us going with Almeida in this fight, but that is the really tricky thing. When you look at it, I mean, he spent a lot of time grappling, and he definitely has that background, but that's the thing with Danilo Marques. It's his world that you're entering. If you can beat him there, that would be amazing. I mean, look at what Fluffy Hernandez did to Rodolfo Vieira, but when I look at this fight, I do have a little bit of, reservations really anchoring everything to Jailton Almeida. So it would be a pass for me. And in the comments section, Justin Villegas giving me a hard time because it compared Edge to Jailton Almeida. He does the spear across the cage, and then he grabs your legs after he does it, takes you down, so on and so forth. Sean V saying Almeida makes amateur mistakes, and often. That kind of is the thing, and the reason why I wouldn't anchor everything to him. Matt, our second Canadian on the card, Malcolm Gordon coming in. He's out of Toronto Top Team. You have Alexis Davis, who's been down in California for a very long time, but originally out of that Niagara region, close into Welland. She's from Port Colborne. She's taking on Lithuania's Julija Stoliarenko, who went over and away to the Netherlands to get her black belt in jiu-jitsu from Hodger Gracie. So really neat to see in the camp for this one. She trained a little bit in Belfast, Northern Ireland with Liam McCourt. I mean, hey, making moves. So big time Bellator fighter there. But when I do look at this fight, won't spend a ton of time on it, but Yulia Stoliarenko, I can sell you a bill of goods, but she hasn't delivered on those in the UFC. And Alexis Davis is the most consistent fighter I've ever seen. Win or lose, she always does the same thing.
And that's the good thing about Alexis Davis. She's like LaMarcus Aldridge coming off the bench for the Brooklyn Nets. Like, it's just going to be a lot of left side post-ups on the elbow. And that's it. Like, you know what you're going to get. And it is diminished at this stage of its career, but at least I have a pretty good idea as to what Alexis Davis's game plan will be today. She's going to march forward. Is she going to eat probably too many punches? Yeah, probably. And that's something that I always worry about with Alexis Davis, because I go back to the Cindy Dandois fight. Yeah, I've been around for a minute, guys. And Cindy Dandois, for as awful as her striking is technically, just her volume was able to at least attack Alexis Davis at some points. And Davis did have to really dedicate herself to the leg kick and sort of duck in to land her own shots, but she was struggling with some of the range of Dandois in that matchup, and that's always stuck in the back of my mind because, hey, if Cindy Dandois can let you up on the feet for a little bit, then I'm going to worry about you with other decent strikers in the UFC. But that's where I get to with this fight. Unless Stoliarenko does land that one big shot as Alexis Davis is walking in, and Davis doesn't have a bad shin by any means. I'm not saying this to set up the fact that, like, oh, if Davis just kind of protects her head, she can win. Like, she can need a big shot. She can keep on moving forward. And here's the other thing that I don't think we talk nearly enough about. Alexis Davis in a hard fight doesn't just give up. Like, she is still the same fighter. If she's up 2 rounds or down 2 rounds, by round 3, she's still going to be putting on that pace. She's still going to have a lot of pressure. So, for all those reasons, I think I'm going to be picking Alexis Davis in this fight, but Stoliarenko should win this matchup.
Yulia Stoliarenko. I mean, listen, she had the fight against Leah Letson in the finale of The Ultimate Fighter. She had the fight against Penny Kanzat on that season as well. In the UFC, Yana Kunitskaya, in her last time out, she took on a tricky fighter in Julia Avila. You look at her striking metrics, and listen, don't look into it too much, but these are talking points. Strikes, significant strikes landed per minute, 2.32. UFC average 3.3, so less than a full strike per minute. She receives 3.7. That's bad. That's not good. Alexis Davis, 4.55 to 4.5. At least it's a positive. And when you watch this fight, Davis is the busier fighter. And Donnie Dimes, I'm not saying it to be mean, but Donnie Dimes, you know, yeah, I don't have Yulia Stoliarenko in this fight. I picked her to beat Kunitskaya. I picked her, I think I picked her to beat Avila as well, because she has a judo background. She has this jiu-jitsu black belt right now. You look at her fight against Lisa Brazosa, it's a car crash, and her striking is great. She throws in combination. You watch her fight against Avila. She was able to land a few good combinations and really land, but she also drops her hands and eats a lot of damage, not just numbers on the page. So I can't go with Yulia Stoliarenko in this fight. I do have the Canadian Alexis Davis. Not often that I pick the Canadian, and I get it. Adam is saying, listen, Stoliarenko is the much larger woman. Don't forget, though, Alexis Davis fought for a belt at bantamweight one time against Ronda Rousey. So, yeah, I do have Alexis Davis here. I see the conversation over there about Kay Hansen. And who was it? In her last fight, she took on Jasmine Jasdavicius, the Canadian. But, yeah, both of us going with Alexis Davis in this one. I'm not crazy about the size difference. But, listen, Yulia Stoliarenko, you can go back to our other videos. You can go back to the start of the week. I've been high on her at points. I just think Alexis Davis is one of those fighters. It's going to be tricky, but age could catch up to poor old Alexis. Matt, we move into our next fight. Third Canadian on the card. We have Quebec's own Marc-Andre Barriault taking on the man himself, Chidi Bang Bang, Njokuani. And Matt, in this fight, I was surprised. I actually saw a tweet. I believe it was Clint McLean that threw it out there. You know him. He's a friend of the show. The fact that Chidi Njokuani was, what, an underdog, and now he's the favorite. Now best fight on. Ooh, that's kind of sneaky. So Chidi Njokuani was. He opened a plus 120, and then all of a sudden on Friday, he got down as low as a minus 110. Now he's a minus 108. So late line movement and swift line movement on Chidi Njokuani. Marc-Andre Barriault, minus 160 at one point. He's a minus 112 right now. So the odds are basically par when we look at this one. We were split on the pick earlier on in the week. Somebody put a lot of money on Chidi Njokuani to get the win. But again, this is one of those ones, like I saw it right down the middle, so I went with the underdog.
Someone who doesn't listen to Matthew Allen of Fight Night Picks put a lot of money on Chidi Njokuani. Here's the thing. Chidi doesn't have one-punch knockout power. He has very, very good striking, but he does require a lot of technique and a lot of setups and traps with his striking to really set up his big strikes to then drop his opponent, hurt them. Because the thing about Njokuani is that he not only has good striking, like he is a good grappler offensively, especially when he has his opponent hurt.
It's kind of weird because you wouldn't think of him that way.
Exactly. I always go back to Carl Roberson about how, Carl Roberson, he's a striker, right? Then you look at his tapology and like over half his wins are by submission. It's just, these colors don't rhyme. But the thing about Njokuani Njokuani is that I don't think he's going to be able to set up multiple power strikes on Barriault. I think he'll be able to hit him with one big shot, but my problem is, after that one big shot, Barriault is probably just going to clinch every single time. And this is the weird way that MMA judges, and this is why their job is so hard. Njokuani might hurt Barriault with a big shot, but if Barriault clinches him for 40 seconds, it kind of erases that big shot out of everyone's mind, and I honestly think that's how the fight's gonna go. Normally I'm on here trying to be like, ooh, this could be a great fight, I can't wait for it, but I really do think that the clinch control of Marc-Andre Barriault is going to be a big factor in this fight. Could he eat a flying knee and could I look stupid? Yes, it's happened before on this channel, I'm sure it's gonna happen again, but I do like just the consistent style of Barriault in this one.
The best part about it is Ted is all over me parce que moi je parle français, puis moi je travaille aussi au Québec, donc c'est Marc-Andre Barriault. On prononce pas le T.
I like Quebec.
Mais
beautiful.
Oui, moi aussi. But when we look at this fight, Matt, for Chidi Njokuani, that's exactly it. Marc-Andre Barriault, former 205-pound champ over TKO. So this is, again, the conversation. Alexis Davis taking on Stoliarenko. Marc-Andre Barriault taking on Chidi Njokuani. Barriault actually weighed right under 185, so that's always fun to see.
Good.
And Chidi Njokuani, very fun fighter as well. But again, totally different style. So when I look at Barriault, what does he struggle against? A lot of movement. And I think Chidi Njokuani is going to be able to bring some of that movement. The thing that scares me a little bit with picking Chidi is, like you said, sometimes he's willing to grapple a little bit, and that's the thing that against a guy like Barriault, Barriault doesn't go for a ton of takedowns, or he hasn't really in the UFC. Again, Abu Azaitzar, where you at, bud? Just messing around with those potatoes. But when I look at this one, I like the movement of Njokuani, I like the volume, and that's something that's caused Barriault problems in his losses. That's why I have Njokuani.
I'm glad you bring up the fact, though, that Njokuani is almost too happy to grapple. It's my Brian Ortega theory, where it's like, hey, you might be really good at this, but every second you spend on the mat not getting a submission, you're getting hurt a lot. And it's not like Barriault can just go out there and hit you with the kind of ground and pound that Volkanovski can, but if you do play around with him on the ground, and let's say there's a minute left in a round, you feel like you're up a little bit, okay, I can give up this takedown, I'll work my way back up to my feet. If that's the kind of mindset you have against someone like Marc-Andre, that's when he will tire you out, get you deep into the second, into the third round, which is not a place you want to be when you're fighting power bar.
Est-ce qu'on a des autres combattants francophones ici ce soir?
Je pense pas.
Je crois que c'est juste une. All right, Matt, so we move into our next Canadian. We have me and Hakeem Dawodu. The Fight Night Picks question mark kicks parlay kicks off with me and Hakeem. I've got him in this one to get the win over Mike Trizano. And actually, I think this is the hardest part of the entire question mark kicks parlay. So if you want to fade it, listen, power to you. Mike Trizano's a good fighter, coming out of Tiger Schulman's. He already has the blueprint from his teammate Julio Arce, who fought to a split decision against Hakeem Dawodu, a guy who loves to fight split decisions. But he's one of those guys that when he's in open space, he is such a joy to watch with his Muay Thai. He's such a very, very fun striker. Mike Trizano's one of those guys that once he figures out fun strikers, like he did against Ludwig Klein, now all depends on how he scored that last fight. It was very close. And the judges, less one, scored different rounds for different fighters, which is always a little scary. But yeah, in this one, I think it is a really close fight. Trizano is an interesting guy too because he's had some split decisions in the UFC. One of them was against Joe Giannetti, who just never broke through. But Matt, I love this fight. In the comments section, Dev the Dude saying 7-inch reach advantage. Alex Graham saying Hakeem gonna touch Trizano whenever and however. That's aggressive. So what are you seeing in this fight?
I like Dawodu quite a bit, and these are the reasons why. I always feel like it's important to figure out, okay, what is both fighters' easiest way to have a lot of success? Hakeem Dawodu legitimately has a range where Mike Trizano cannot reach him, and he can get off a lot of power shots on Mike Trizano. And that's anywhere from that sort of long range, calf kicking range into a jabbing kind of front kick range. Anything of that long kickboxing range extremely heavily favors Hakeem Dawodu because Trizano has decent volume and decent power when he can get on the inside of his opponents, but when he is forced to be on the outside, there's a lot of just waiting and waiting and waiting. And he will sort of fill that empty space and that empty time with takedown attempts, and that can be really beneficial for him. But the thing about Hakeem Dawodu is that he might not move left to right as much as I'd like him to. He is a little bit stationary when he tries to set up his power shots, but he is very light on his feet. And when he does sense a takedown attempt incoming, that's when he can use his mobility to get out of the way. My only issue with picking Hakeem Dawodu, and I do like him in this fight, I am still picking with him, But when it goes bad, it goes really bad. He is kind of like James Harden, last Basketball Reference, at least for this fight, where it's like, okay, when it's great, it's great. You look so good with your striking. But when it's bad, it's like, okay, you don't play defense and you don't really do any of those positives. That's the only thing I worry about with Hakeem Dawodu. Like, I could see a world where Mike Trizano takes his back in 45 seconds and chokes him out, just because we've both been singing Hakeem Dawodu's praises all week. But I think this could be a great fight. I don't think it's going to be one way or the other. I do think we're going to get at least 2 competitive rounds, then we'll see where it goes from there. But I do like Hakeem Dawodu.
It's the last Basketball Reference, at least for this fight.
At least for this fight.
All right, yeah. I mean, yeah, Dylan R got it. That's why I was laughing. American Born, you can hit up the super chat. We would certainly appreciate it with the absence of a sponsor. Or you could just reference a sponsor to us. That'd be cool. But yeah, both of us going with Dawodu. The question is, could Hakeem get taken out? 100%. It's happened before. I mean, but it's happened before, and he's been submitted before, especially in his long-anticipated UFC debut against Danny Henry, which was an awkward one because it was a defensive submission, but there's definitely ways for him to get finished. There's definitely ways for Trizano to win. Trizano's one of those guys, he really brings a complete skill set, even though he might just be billed as a striker. So again, fade me if you want. That's absolutely fine.
I'm glad you said that about Trizano. Like, if you were trying to explain his style to somebody who doesn't watch MMA, you would just say he's well-rounded, probably. You would just say he is a mixed martial artist. Because
that's how Bruce Buffer would introduce him.
Exactly. Because, yes, he's a good boxer. Yes, he has good wrestling. But he doesn't have any one skill that just jumps so far out ahead of everything else that he does. So I really do see this as sort of a primary striker versus a well-rounded mixed
Now,
martial
Matt,
artist.
I have him as a part of the question mark kicks parlay. The question is, do you see a world where the mullet is a guaranteed victory? I'm not about oxymoron, so I'll move on to the next fight, Matt. We have Miles Johns taking on John Castaneda, and this, I think, could be fireworks. It really could, because for Miles Johns, this is a guy that 1-2, and then he closes it at 1-2. Do I throw kicks? Nah, not really, but 1-2. And then he wrestles a little bit, and he gets on top, and he pours on great pressure. And for John Castaneda, I mean, he can fight behind the jab from southpaw. He throws a lot of kicks. He moves side to side a lot. He moves front to back a lot. And he defends well on angles when he moves back. We talked about a lot of fighters recently where, hey, his or her glaring hole is the fact that they just back straight up with their head up and they don't have any good movement. If you look at it, John Castaneda, very good movement. Miles Johns, very good forward pressure too. We don't often see him backed up. And if you want to see a really good one, it's when he's like backed up at plants and throws the uppercut against Kevin Natividad, because it was disgusting. So I really like this fight, Matt. I want to have a look at the odds really quick because Miles Johns is a favorite when we made the video. He's minus 248. And all of a sudden, a bunch of money came in on John Castaneda. Miles Johns now minus 188. We look at it for Castaneda plus 159. I took John Castaneda because I like the movement. I like the fact that Castaneda throws a lot of kicks from southpaw. And when I went back and watched the tape, Johns hasn't fought a ton of southpaws, but when he did fight Richie Santiago, who's a grappler and a southpaw in Dana White's Contender Series, he just kind of like boxed the air between them and then took him down and was able to just hold him down and end up with a pretty good win. So that could definitely happen here. I just like the fact that Castaneda also has a wrestling background. But again, I've been on the Miles John hype train, so it's a little tough to pick against him.
I get excited for a Miles Johns fight.
Yeah.
Like, someone goes to sleep when he fights.
Canadians for the Cup likes it, but Alex Fox, who shared this on Twitter, so thank you, Alex Fox, saying pop and popcorn.
Yeah, I really do think this is an incredible fight, because for Castaneda, he's not supposed to win this, right? Like, Miles Johns had a little bit of hype at one point, got knocked out by Mario Bautista. It was a bad knockout.
He's got a fight coming up, too.
He does, but Mario Bautista's not some scrub by any means. If you lose to him, it's not like, okay, we gotta go back to the drawing board. And that's what I did like out of Miles Johns since that fight. He didn't go back and just completely rebuild his game. He just thought, okay, I'm gonna tighten up my holes, and that'll be fine. Didn't need to say that's a Luke Rockhold right there. But here's the thing. For Miles Johns, I still do see him as that sort of, maybe not top tier prospect. We talk about guys like Ilya Topuria or Soggy Dog's another guy who's sort of in that range. But I do think he's going to be a top 15 fighter at some point. And I agree with everything you said about Castaneda and his ability to keep distance. And I do like his ability to strike from both sides. I worry about his ability to maintain that range, though, in this fight, and that's why I do have Miles Johns, because if Castaneda can't get Johns' respect early in this fight, I do see Johns just moving forward a lot, and I don't really think either guy has a massive wrestling advantage over the other. I do think we're probably going to see the majority of this fight being contested on the feet, so for me it comes down to, can Castaneda maintain range? Maybe he can, and if he will be able to do that, he's going to pick up a massive win today, but I do see Johns getting on the inside at some point, probably landing some body shots, because, like you said, he doesn't throw kicks at all. hey, Miles, please, I guess I don't know anything. You're much better than me. But he doesn't throw many kicks, so it would be nice if he did have some sort of long-term striking goals. Like, if you go to the body and if you go to the legs, they don't always pay off in round 1, but they do help you round 2, round 3. If Johns had some of those techniques, I think they'd really help him in this matchup.
To me, I mean, I see Alex Graham's comment too, and it makes a lot of sense. But to me, it's one of those ones, I mean, do I like Miles Johns at a decent favorite where he was at the start of the week, and now he's even better? Like, you might like Miles Johns a little bit more right now. Like, I'm liking him more, quite honestly. Like, now that we're under that minus 200 range, I would consider taking a stab at Miles Johns, because I think it was lined all right. Craig's got the underdog. I mean, I still have the underdog in this one, but this is very much, again, it's this way or it's that way. Something's going to happen. One of us is going to be wrong, and I'm fine if it's me, but I do have Castaneda in this fight.
The one thing I will say, the last thing about Miles Johns, he does carry his power late, which is nice to see. That's not something you can say about a lot of fighters. So if he is able to get the win today, and if he can build a little bit, I think there's a lot of exciting matchups for him in the future.
Just not against the Coltrane, the Canadian. Ugh, that third round went bad for him. But, Matt, we move on to our next fight. And we got Thick Steven. And I say Thick Steven because if you miss weight 2 times in 2 fights in a row, you're the thickie. And listen, 148.5 his last fight. And then he's looking shredded on Instagram. Now he's 149. So Matt, fool me once. Shame on you. Fool me twice. Can't get fooled again, but I did. So Ocho's coming into this fight taking on Juicy J, Julian Erosa. And Steven Peterson is another one of those fighters that when Joe Martinez puts his flair on it, this man is a mixed martial artist. I mean, that's pretty much what you can say about Steven Peterson. You can take some guys down and hold them down and do a little bit. And you can strike with them and sometimes throw a spinning back fist and knock a guy out and get like fight of the or knockout of the year. But when it really comes to this one, it is tough. I mean, Juicy J stylistically is like turned up a little bit more. Like, it's like listening to King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard and going, wow,
good reference.
We're switching it up between albums. We have different themes. We have a new album coming out in 2022. It's probably one of like 4 because they just keep coming out with music. But I love it. The only trouble is for King Gizzard and Lizard Wizard, not mainstream enough. I think they're going to get there. For Juicy J, his chin.
It's concerning. The thing about Steven Peterson is that no one's going to know who this basketball player is. He's like Stromile Swift to me. He had like one half-decent half-season. He had that one cool poster, but none of you guys know where Stromile Swift is now. I don't either. He's probably just like you or me. The thing is, Peterson has that crazy poster that everybody knows him for, and it's kind of like the Joaquin Buckley curse, where it's like, okay, we expect you to be that guy now forever, and it's just not who Steven Peterson is. He was able to look really good, beat Martin Bravo, and let's give him his praise. Like, that is one of the nicest knockouts I've ever seen. Countering a spinning back fist with a spinning back fist to flatline a guy. You can't get nicer than that. I just don't think he's going to be able to use that kind of surprise technique to catch Julian Erosa, because I don't think he can outstrike Julian Erosa just on the feet. And let's say he can get the takedown at some point. I think Erosa's at least mobile enough off of his back and active enough off of his back to attack and to get back up to his feet.
McLean Dancy hanging out from Cowtown. Let's get into it. Go Flames. And yeah, I mean, when it does come to this fight, it is tough. I mean, Donnie Dime saying Peterson isn't knocking out Juicy. You never know.
Is Stromile Swift in jail? Sorry, I didn't know that.
I just like that odd music. Sean McMinn hitting us up in the super chat. And I really do appreciate it. So, Matt, yeah, I've got Julian Erosa in this fight. I've got him in the question mark kicks parlay to minus 300. So, I've got Erosa and Akeem Dawodu at a minus 170. And I have one more to go with it. But if you stop there, it's a plus 112.
And Armchair MMA, you're 100% right. I don't ever put money on Julian Erosa fights. Like, I feel like I have a pretty good read as to what he's good at and what he isn't good at. It's just the lack of durability really does concern me.
If you think, like, it's a bucket of popcorn. That's all that's going on this one. But, Matt, we move into our next fight. And, listen, we got Tresean Gore taking on Brian Battle. Another one where it's one way or the other. Tresean Gore is lightning fast, and he has dynamite in his jabs, which is two things that Trevin Giles also has, but he tends to lose and gets knocked out, especially his last 2 fights. So it comes to this one where Tresean Gore 3-0, 4-0 if it was the Ultimate Fighter. Brian Battle, same thing. Do you add the +1 where he was able to get the win over Petrovsky? 3-round fight, but it's an exhibition. I always feel weird about that one. But Brian Battle, able to have that trophy at home. That's pretty cool. Again, the question is, does he put it in like a backpack and bring it out to the cage today?
I think it should be like a BMF type deal, but they get like, I don't know, who could be The Rock for this? I don't really know who a prospect version of The Rock would be. I think they should market this, though.
Quebec's own Kevin Owens. We're just all about the Quebecers.
That would be a bad idea. Just do something for it. Like, make it feel somewhat special. Because for Tresean Gore, a lot of people did feel like he was going to win that season of The Ultimate Fighter. He looked so good every single fight, hurts his knee, and then it's nothing against Brian Battle, but Battle did have a tough finale in that matchup, and that's why a lot of people are confident with Gore this weekend. But again, I sort of brought it up before we got into the episode in the intro. I see people putting some lofty expectations on Tresean Gore right now, and I don't think that's fair to a guy who's only 3-0-0 in his MMA career right now.
Just a second, because there's comments out there, and I want to make sure that I get it right. Where are we? It might have been Donnie Dimes. Lack of respect for Rosa. All right, there we go. Lausnan. Gore would have won tough anyway. You there? You're here?
Yeah.
You're there? Hey, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter anymore.
Injuries happen in every sport. I love the Toronto Raptors more than any other team going, but they wouldn't have an NBA title if Kevin Durant's Achilles was a lot more healthy. So there's always going to be a weird here or there in every single sport, no matter what.
No, I'm just kidding, Lausnan. You know that. But when we're having fun with this one, again, Tresean Gore, great speed, great power. The combination that you love to have in a fighter. It's inexperience as a pro MMA fighter. He has the amateur experience. He has the experience from the show. But again, like when I look at Tresean Gore's overall body of work, and I look at the one for Brian Battle, and I hate to do that when you're comparing records, especially young in both guys' careers. Brian Battle's 6-1 as a pro. What was he as an amateur? 7-1? 7-2? 8-2? It was 8-2. And he fought Cody Brundage to a split decision, and he out-wrestled Impa Kasanganay as an amateur. Then he goes through the pro ranks. Does he take on the best level of guys? No. Are any of those guys in major promotions? No. Well, Andre Petrosky is, and he knocked out Gilbert Urbina, or he submitted him. But when I look at this fight, Matt, I do like Brian Battle just based off of all the available things I've been able to see out of him, and the fact that, could he get cracked? Yeah, and it happens. It does happen. But he has the submission abilities. I do like the overall game out of Brian Battle, so that's why I've got the underdog, if I'm not mistaken, in this fight.
I look at Battle as the more steady out of these two, and if anyone's going to win by decision, it probably will be Battle. Unless, let's say, he goes for a big flurry early on and Tresean Gore can just completely out-wrestle him. But I like Gore in this matchup based on his speed advantage, because we have seen Battle get tagged in the past, and he is a good striker, but the thing with Battle is he is a little bit slow to react when guys close the distance on him, and that is sort of Gore's Hall of Fame skill, if there is one. He's kind of built like Sean Sherk for this division a little bit, doesn't have the longest arms, does have to get on the inside of a lot of guys, and I think he will be able to at some point. Again, it makes it sound like I'm predicting knockout, and then I predict Tresean Gore is going to win 10 times out of 10. I don't mean that by any means. It's just, I think the way these guys match up, I do think the speed advantage can help Gore quite a bit.
Max Sherman saying, Battle is so slow. Did you guys watch Tough? Yeah, he is slower. Gore's faster. Battle has a bigger bag of tricks, and that's why I like him. So, Matt, we'll move on to our next fight. Holy crow. I mean, what is there to say? Smiling Sam's back. Heavy left hook. Brendan Allen got knocked out 2 months ago.
Fun fact, there's an NHL goalie who shares the same name as Craig and I, but we're not related at all. But growing up, I was asked all the time, are you related to this goalie?
Oh, it still happens today.
All the time. It's like kind of insane.
Played ball with his brother.
Exactly. From the same hometown. Here's the thing. No one's ever confused me with being Brandon Allen's relative by any means, and that has nothing to do with my fight pick on this, but I don't see how Sam Alvey wins this fight. I know Clint has been out there on Twitter praising Sam Alvey. He's such a big underdog, but I just don't know how Sam Alvey's going to go out there and take this fight from Brendan Allen, because when everybody talks about this fight, they talk about what mistake is Brendan Allen going to make and how can Sam Alvey capitalize on that. If that never happens, though, what is Sam Alvey relying on?
Brendan Allen's live fight reads are troubling sometimes. And that's where, who was it, Akash Deep and a few others that said, fight IQ, this and that. His in-game reads are not good. Because if a guy lands a right hook on him, well, then he still drops his left hand and they land another right hook on him. We've only seen it really matter in 2 different fights. Now, Max Sherman, you guys think the loser goes home? I don't think they send Brendan Allen home just because he's young. He's a former champ with LFA. He still has some clout.
Fighting for a title.
He's 6-2 with the UFC. I don't think they're gonna cut him if you lose to Chris Curtis and then Sam Alvey on short notice at light heavyweight. The other weird thing, and we gotta say this right now. How effing weird is it that Sam Alvey was supposed to cut to middleweight this week and he weighed 205?
He's thick.
Like, how is he gonna cut all that weight?
Fighters cut, yeah.
I-
Douglas Lima once
I know, but
rehydrated
20
to
pounds.
It's extreme, but again, 20 pounds for somebody fighting at middleweights a lot less than 20 pounds for someone fighting at bantamweight.
It's crazy how an older guy on this big of a losing streak just, oh yeah, well I guess, and it was like in the week. We had already done a video on Phil Haas, so crazy to see that way. I've got Brendan Allen, but this is in the least confident picks of the card, just because Brendan Allen's a juiced up favorite in this spot. Like, Sam Alvey could definitely crack him. Brendan Allen's been finished, and he's gotten cracked even in the fights that he wins. So I've got Allen, but I stay away from it.
But again, he got cracked by Chris Curtis, who's awesome, and Sean Strickland, who's in the main event tonight. So I do worry. Again, I agree. He does make some questionable reads on the feet, but against really good fighters. And just to bring up the point about his striking defense, most people don't throw strikes on the same side twice in a row. Everybody's striking defense goes left, right. Like Robbie Lawler, when he fought RDA, he got his you-know-what beat in that fight.
Winnipeg.
But he did that exact same thing with his striking defense, so I'm not going to put that much stock into it. I do like Brendan Allen quite a bit. We've seen him fight a guy who's way better than Sam Alvey in every single area in Punahele Soriano, and he was able to deal with that quite well, so I do like him in this match.
Crooked-eyed saying, Allen, pressure on offense. Don't sleep on the guy. I think I'll stay awake. Matt, Shavkat Rakhmonov taking on Carlston Harris. Now, the Carlston Harris contingent of MMA fandom, they're all over this guy. And I agree with you. I love him. I wish we got him 8 years earlier. I really do. Because it's crazy to see how his career's gone. I mean, who's the knockout loss he had in his last time out? It was Jarrah Al-Salawi, if I'm not mistaken, the champ over with Brave. And he's looked amazing ever since. And in the UFC, 2 big wins, 2 big finishes, one by submission, one by knockout. He's more of a submission artist than he is a knockout artist. But when he throws the right hand, right straight, right overhand, or right club, he is able to do a lot of very special things. But Carlston Harris aside, Shavkat Rakhmonov, he got his due this week. He finally got his due.
Happy.
Everybody's all over Shavkat Rakhmonov. It doesn't have to be Fight Night picks, but this guy will get into some of those car crash exchanges, but he usually comes out of it without a lot of damage on his face, so you like to see that. And very, very good with the submissions as well. So I think these guys are matched up so well together, and this should be one of the best fights this weekend.
This is one of my biggest MMA hot takes, and I'm kind of curious to see if people are ready for it. I think Shavkat Rakhmonov is as good of a fighter as Khamzat Chimaev.
No. Jimmy Rivera saying, Harris, are you that Jimmy?
Hear me out. I don't just mean like, oh, he's as good as him skill for skill, but I think they're going to fight one day, and I think the odds are going to be close. I really do. I think Shavkat is that level of prospect in this division, and I know that's a lot to say because Khamzat just doesn't even get hit. He is in a category of his own, but what Shavkat is able to demonstrate is that he's a very good striker on the feet. Like you said, he can walk out of a car crash and not be hurt whatsoever, and he stays calm in the pocket. There's something to be said for that. There's so many MMA fighters who, they get hit and then they panic, even at like the championship level fights. Remember when Fabricio Verdum fought Stipe Miocic? Fabricio gets hit one time, sprints forward towards Stipe, and then gets knocked out. Like, things happen like that in MMA. The thing about Shavkat is that he stays smart defensively in the pocket and can respond with his own power shots. And he is so good defensively with his submissions that guys don't really want to shoot on him in the first place. So, again, I really do think that Shavkat's going to be in the top 15 at some point in the near future. People are not liking what I've said about Shavkat and his future, though.
I think Bilal Muhammad beats him. I think Leon Edwards beats him. I think there's a lot of guys that beat him. I love him.
But they could beat Khamzat, too. That's my point.
No.
You don't think Leon Edwards could beat Khamzat Chimaev?
Nope.
I don't think you could be so cold against me, but then say a guy who's ranked number 2 is going to lose to him. It's just, I really do think that Shavkat has that type of future in front of him.
I do think Shavkat Rakhmonov wins this fight, though. I mean, I think it's such a tight one. I think it's really, really close on paper, and this is like the biggest pop and popcorn. This is my favorite fight of the weekend. It really is, because Carlston Harris has all of those things. The best thing that Carlston Harris has is he was able to just nonchalantly walk into the cage over in Abu Dhabi, finish Habib's guy while Habib was there with the Salt Bay, salting it up. So for me, yeah, I do have Rakhmonov. I think he does have a striking edge in terms of speed and elusiveness, and I really do like his footwork compared to that of Harris, because Harris can kind of lunge and get himself opened up. Like, I'm looking at next weekend's card again. First fight on UFC 271. Jeremiah Wells taking on Blood Diamond. Jeremiah Wells just throws himself out there with his strikes, but when they land, he knocks guys dead. Carlston Harris is one of those guys. He's good with his length because he has pop at the end of his shots, but he can get a little wonky, and I think he can get countered there. So I do like Shavkat in this fight, but Matt, we really did open it up in the comment section. So we move into our co-main event of the evening, Punahele Soriano taking on Nick Maximov. JUCO wrestling status against D3 All-American status. Oh, by the way, Nick Maximov turned that up with his grappling. And listen, you don't need to be a black belt to be the greatest grappler in the world. Khamzat Chimaev's not a black belt. Not even close to it. He's got to spend, what, like another 10 years to become a black belt? But when it comes to this one, the brown belt of Nick Maximov is very impressive. And in that fight against Oscar Cota, he was able to out-wrestle him in a lot of positions. A heavyweight at 263 when he weighed 209 on short notice and a few weeks' notice. But when we look at this fight, Puna Soriano, great defensive hips, only defended one takedown, so his takedown defense 100% in the UFC. Don't come at me with that stat, because Brendan Allen's the only guy that's tried to take him down on Contender Series and UFC. But when it comes to this one, Matt, in the comments section, Alex Graham says Matt is tripping. Joe says Puma. We should start calling him that. No, now he says Puna. So when it comes to this one, Matt, Kurtar is saying Maximov round 3 worth a sprinkle. When you look at this fight, like, what do you see out of this one?
I think this is going to be one of those weird fights where it probably will end early. I don't see this going to the judges' scorecards because this is the weird thing about Maximov. His striking defense gets significantly worse as the fight goes on because he does have such a grimy style. And part of that is himself. He fights at a very high pace. He's very dedicated to his takedowns. So he does find himself having one of those, high volume takedown kind of fights where he's going for 4, 5, 6 attempts to only get one down. Yes, that's positive. You are getting the takedown, but you're going to be burning your arms out a lot in that matchup. And like you said, Soriano's not some guy who just falls over when you go for a takedown attempt. He is very big. He's very strong. He has good hips, like you said, and he's good at defending takedowns up against the cage, too. Some people are very good at that. Some people are very poor at that. I feel like it's good to point out that Soriano is really good at defending takedowns up against the cage, and I think that's going to be really important in this fight for him. But this is the other thing that is in the back of my mind the whole entire time. Nick Maximov could go 1 for 13 on takedown attempts, and that's still all he needs to win this fight. Like, I know we haven't seen his world-class jiu-jitsu in the cage just yet, and it's like highest potential, but there's a version of him that just shows up and rear naked chokes like 3 guys in a row, and that trend could start any single fight.
Cody Brundage is a pretty good wrestle boxer. Nick Maximov went 4 for 15 of takedown attempts, was still able to get 9 minutes, 21 seconds of control time in his last fight. So he could do that against Puna Soriano. I think Puna's a better striker than Brundage. I think the weird thing about this fight too, and it's one of those ones, I think we talked about it at the start of the week. I think we did. Both these guys are southpaw, and when you're a southpaw taking on another southpaw, it's like that Spider-Man meme. Like, what do I do? It's like a left-handed batter taking on a left-handed pitcher. Some guys are really good at it. Some guys aren't. Like, really, really aren't. You have to platoon them. But when it comes to this one, I think Soriano might be able to get the better of some of those exchanges. We talked about the striking again at the start of the week. Maximov trains at the Nick Diaz Academy. Is it for his wrestling? Is it for his boxing? Is it for his jiu-jitsu? Well, you see him doing a lot of jiu-jitsu there, and you see him doing a little bit of boxing there, and he spent time at Wildcard as well, Freddie Roach's gym. So it's interesting to see all of that stuff. But Matt, when I do look at this, I have Punahele Soriano. I like his striking. I don't like Maximov's one shot to get close to reach for the takedown, if you kind of get where I'm coming from.
I agree. I think Puna will be able to hurt Maximov on multiple occasions throughout this fight. But again, I do worry that there's some, Super Saiyan Nick Maximov out there who can just show up and start rear naked choking everybody because his jiu-jitsu really is world class. If you ever had the chance to go back and just watch him compete in jiu-jitsu tournaments, he moves like a small guy even though he is so big, and he can float around guys' guards really well. So if he is able to get the takedown, I do expect him to win by submission, but I think Puna can keep this fight on the feet, and he is the much better striker. This is the last thing I'll say about Soriano though. He does have weird pockets where he has top level power, and then he has times where you're like, oh, that looked like it landed clean, why didn't it do anything? I do think he is the much better striker in this matchup though.
There was somebody there. Jacob Malkoun is the GOAT. The GOAT is Martin Sano, Nick Maximov's teammate. Can't wait to see him back in the UFC. Matt, our main event, we have Jack Hermansson taking on Sean Strickland. This is where it gets interesting. So I want to see the comments over there in the comments section. First last, Maximov is a Stephanie Egger middleweight, and Julija Stoliarenko is the Stephanie Egger of bantamweight. And Stephanie Egger's also in that division. So what does that mean? But Matt, when it comes to this fight, Jack Hermansson, lethal ground and pound, weird takedowns, weird striking. There's a lot of things that he does where he's not like your average bear, and then he kind of celebrates like he's the maddest bear that's waking up out of hibernation. He's going to come for your garbage can. So for Jack Hermansson, interesting guy, where moved from Sweden when he was 19. That was an interesting watch when he did that interview with John Gooden. John Gooden, Where you been, bud? Can't wait for more. I miss him.
He's been grappling with Tom Aspinall. I saw that on Instagram.
That's interesting. And but when we come to this one, Matt, you've got Hermansson, moves from 19 over to Norway, trains primarily out of Norway where MMA is illegal. It's been illegal for a long time. And he's been able to put on such an impressive resume in the UFC. And you look at some of the losses, like Thiago Santos. Well, that's going to happen. So I do look at like Jared Cannonier. He's pretty good. You look at Sean Strickland and the losses. Kamaru Usman, Eliseu Zaleski dos Santos, Santiago Ponzinibbio. If you're not those guys, you lost the fight. And at middleweight, undefeated in the UFC. And listen, he had his first 2 fights in the UFC at middleweight. Former King of the Cage middleweight champ. He was undefeated. And so far, since he's come back after that wild motorcycle wreck, he's looked very, very good. He beat Nordin Taleb in Moncton, New Brunswick, Canada. Fun one. I didn't get to see the fight because I was backstage interviewing the fighters. But when it comes to this one, Matt, and we really focus in on it, both totally different styles.
They really are. And for Sean Strickland, he has had a massive career resurgence at 185 pounds, and he looks like a way better fighter. It doesn't just look like a fighter who isn't cutting weight now, and they're like, okay, I guess I'll do this. Like, he has made serious improvements at this weight class, too, and he just sort of believes in his own gas tank more, and I really do think that that's been his biggest improvement. He's not worried about the amount of volume that he's putting out, because, and I always go back to this fight for this example, when Aljamain Sterling had success against Petr Yan in the feet, it's not because he's a better striker than Petr Yan, it's that if I throw enough punches, you just have to be defensive at a certain point, because it's not like you're just going to respond at the same time I am. We're not Don Fry here. And with Sean Strickland, with his, I guess, more confidence in his own cardio, he's not afraid to go out there, throw combinations, throw with a very high level of volume, because he knows he's still going to be there in round 4 and round 5. And I do feel like that Uriah Hall fight sort of reinforced that in his own mind. So if we do see an even more confident Sean Strickland today, we might be in for a real contender at this weight class. Here's the thing, and again, I'm sticking with Sean Strickland, that's the pick. I've almost talked myself out of this 10 times this week, because here's the thing. I think Jack Hermansson can finish Sean Strickland on the mat, and I don't feel like enough people are talking about that. And I don't just mean by submission, I mean by TKO too. And you had said it at the start of this.
Look at David Branch.
David Branch got caught in one of the weirdest, grossest submissions you've ever seen, that weird outside guillotine. But that's the thing about Hermansson. Last basketball reference, because it's the last fight. He is kind of like Manu Ginobili. He's really good, but nothing he does is traditional. Not the way he goes to the rim, not the way he shoots. Everything he does is weird.
Or no, Sean Marion.
Manu's, I'm just going to stick with Manu. The thing with Hermansson, though, is I don't like how uncomfortable he looks on the feet. And yes, he has had success in the past in striking, but just look at him when he can't successfully get a takedown. He goes for it, has to do like this weird reset shuffle, almost like a Dominic Cruz on the outside, and then he'll sort of get back into the pocket or get back into his sequence. I think when he goes for those reset opportunities, that's when Sean Strickland's going to, maybe not sense weakness, but you get the idea. That'll give him his timing for when, okay, this is when I should be moving forward.
Sean McMinn saying, LOL, wrong sport. Sean McMinn always hitting up the super chat. Canadians for the cup. Michael Kidd Gilchrist shooting for him. Wow, one of the biggest busts ever. Him and Hassim Thabit. But Matt, when it comes to this one, you look at it for Sean Strickland, like again, I mentioned at the very start of the show if you missed it, but I watch those weigh-in face-offs and I hate them, but especially for this one where Jack Hermansson's like, okay, I'm going to smile. And Sean Strickland's like, man, that's like when you're going to pull guard, right? Oh, you got him, Sean. Way to go, pal.
Sean Strickland, a wordsmith.
Knock out another training partner. But when it comes to this one, he's got good volume. He's got weird power. And that's one of those things, a lot of people are all over it. Like, he's one of those guys that picks his shots when he needs to throw with power he does. Look at the Brendan Allen fight. Jab, 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 until his face is completely red, and then he throws the hook, and he wobbles him, and he's able to go in there and finish him. Strickland picks his shots very well. Jack Hermansson is one of those guys, if he gets the takedown, Sean Strickland has good takedown defense in the realm of 81%. That's kind of legendary takedown defense. Like, you look, the last guy that took him down was Kamaru Usman. So, again,
he hasn't fought a lot of wrestlers, though, at this weight division.
That's where it's at. But when you do look at this fight, I'm interested to see, how quickly is Hermansson going to shoot? Because, again, in the fight against Marvin Vettori, it's not like he had a ton of groundwork in that fight, and it was an amazing stand-up battle. But when you compare Vettori and his former training partner, Sean Strickland, their striking's completely different, too. Vettori will play the volume game to normally push you, to clinch you, to work you, hit the body, do what he needs to do. Strickland's going to go out there and just continue to pressure, and he never takes his foot off the gas pedal. That's why I like him.
I couldn't agree more. The part of Sean Strickland's game, though, that I do worry about is what does he look like after he is on the defensive end of like a really heavy grappling round? Because we have yet to see that in this weight division, and that's what Jack Hermansson brings to the cage. Look at what he did to Edmund Shabazian. I know Edmund might not be the prospect people once thought he was, but he's still a talented fighter in his own right. He does pretty well in the first round. They're about 50-50. And then the second Edmund falls off, even a little bit with his cardio, Hermansson completely takes over that fight. So it will be interesting to see if Strickland can have sustained success throughout this fight. Or maybe this will be one of those matchups where it's like, okay, Strickland won the first 3 rounds. He's starting to get a little tired here, round 4. Round 5 is getting interesting. How is Hermansson going to look? I think it's going to be a phenomenal fight, but the pick is going to remain with Sean Strickland.
AM's all over Sean and says, did they read the chat? Yeah, it's there. I read it. And I'll give you this one, too. I've got the over 1.5 rounds in this one and a minus 350 to go along with a Rosa. Minus 300. And Akeem Dawodu minus 170 to give me a plus 172. Thurman or Barrios? Matt, I know who Keith Thurman is. I don't know enough about Barrios. I don't make boxing picks. Sorry, Pulse Reloaded. I'm so sorry.
It'd be nice to see Thurman come back and get a win, but I don't know. I like Danny Garcia. He's my favorite boxer, so that probably tells you a lot about me because he's like good but not great. Should be a good fight though, actually.
I like Alexander Usyk, and I'm not just like a new Usyk truther off the Joshua fight. It's always been there. It's been there. Matt, so yeah, in this one, both of us going with Strickland to get the win, and Corey McGregor saying a Rosa not worth it. I can understand that at minus 300. I think that's silly. Matt, so we look at bottom to top one more time. If anybody missed any of this, we'll go all the way back through the card. It starts off with Gordon taking on Denys Bondar, and there's about 600 of you tuning in for a fight night card that starts in the afternoon. The least you can do, toss us a like. We've already hit that 30K. You're going to get Dana White's Contender Series breakdowns coming up this summer, assuming, because the last season was weird. It was late. So I'll say this summer. You're also going to get a cartoon theme UFC 271 thumbnail. So look out for that one to drop. But Matt, when we start back here, this one's a coin flip, and Denys Bondar is a big favorite, so it's a little scary. I do have Bondar, though, but it does scare me that he's a big favorite.
I like Bondar quite a bit in this matchup, but there's that like critical failure type thing in the back of my head that just sees him eating a massive knee. I don't think it's going to happen. I think he will be able to get the win, but if it goes bad, I could see it going very, very poorly.
He takes giant liberties on the ground too. Like he goes knee on belly where most people can buck you off.
Like if he was in mount, you took a sip out of your water and then you look back up and now he's on the ground and someone's on top of him in half guard, you shouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, that's one of those things. So if you've got Gordon, kudos. I've got Jason Witt, the underdog, taking on Phil Rowe. But again, Phil Rowe can knock him out, and he probably knock him out quick.
That's what I'm really banking on. But again, with Jason Witt, that is sort of the question. Is he going to win by decision or eat a really big shot early and not look very good at all? I think Philip Rowe's got this, but I don't see Philip Rowe as, if he wins this, then let's match him up with some really good fighters. I think it'll be a fun fight, but I don't see this being fight of the night.
All right, Matt. No. Jailton Almeida is too big of a favorite, and he does everything that Danilo Marques does well. But he has better takedowns, and his striking is faster. I didn't say it's better. I said it's faster. It's not great. It's weird. So I do have Jailton Almeida. But listen, if you've got Danilo Marques and he goes out there and submits Almeida, I don't know if I'd say I'm going to eat crow, but yeah.
Putting money on Almeida feels like investing in the most volatile stock in the world, because I do think that there's a version out there where he refines his striking a little bit, he then gets like great body kicks, and he almost becomes like the second coming of Gilbert Burns. I really do think that there's sort of a path for him, at least, that to get to that level. Will we see that today? Who knows? But I think this should be a very exciting fight, because if Marques can win, great. He turned down the young prospect again. Sort of gives the old dog a chance to go on one last run to the top 15. But if Almeida is able to get the win, I really do think he could have an exciting future.
Comment of the week to Ashy Dog saying, I only watch the show to fade your picks. And my comment to you, Ashy Dog, is when we split on the pick, do you just become a mental pretzel and not know what to do?
Thanks for watching.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Matt, we move into our next fight. Both of us going with the Canadian Alexis Davis. But everything says Julija Stoliarenko is bigger, and she has all of the things that can cause Alexis Davis issues. She has good jiu-jitsu, she has good judo, she has decent power, but none of those tend to come together, and maybe this is the fight I'd like to see it. He is definitely, she is definitely the younger fighter, earlier in her career. A lot of miles on Davis, who's 37 at this point. So I think it's going to be a fun one. But for me, I do have Davis. Although, again, this is another fight I could see Stoliarenko getting it.
I never have a lot of confidence picking fighters in their late 30s and lighter weight classes. I'm assuming you probably feel the same way. But no, I do like Alexis Davis. She's the more consistent fighter out of these two, which is wild to say because she's like 1-4 in her last 5. But still, at least I know what I'm going to get out of Alexis Davis, no matter what the result of her fight is. Whereas with Stoliarenko, you never really know what you're going to get.
Anna is saying Stoliarenko for the upset. Donnie Dimes, Stoliarenko, and Ashy Dog. You have a sense of humor. You're all right in our books. You can fade us if you want. You can make fun of us, Matt. Chidi and Njokuani taking on Marc-Andre Barriault coming out of Quebec. We talked a lot about Quebec in this show. Yeah. Fleur de Lis. What else? Poutine. But for Marc-Andre Barriault, I think he's got a great opportunity to win if he pressures, if he does everything that he does in most of his fights. He struggles against a lot of movement. I think Chidi and Njokuani is a better striker in the distance. So, yeah, I have Chidi and Njokuani here.
The real key to this fight is distance management. Like, if DJ Khaled ever came out with major key number 2, it would be called distance management, featuring Chidi and Njokuani and Marc-Andre Barriault. Probably not. I tried way too hard on that. Here's the thing. I think the forward pressure of Barriault really will get to Njokuani at some point. If I'm wrong on this one, I'm almost going to be okay with it because Njokuani's probably going to win very impressively, but I do think the forward pressure of Barriault is going to give him a lot of trouble.
About better, I know as much about that as I do about the applied physics that I learned in university when I was in engineering, and I hated it, so I have no idea what that is, but we're split on the picks, Matt. Our next one, we have Amin Hakeem Dawodu, and I've got Amin Hakeem to get the win in the QMK parlay. Again, Mike Trezano, another one of these live dogs. It is a fun fight. I've got Amin Hakeem here.
I think this could be a back and forth fight where both guys have at least some success, but I do think he's the more reliable fighter to score damaging shots. I know that's like kind of a wild last thing to fall back on, but when these guys are in open space, unless Trezano is going for a takedown, securing a takedown, doing some type of grappling, I don't know how he's going to be able to get a lot of success on at long range. Maybe he can just crash the distance all night long and secure takedowns, but I do think Dawodu is going to make him pay every time he moves forward, so I do like Hakeem.
Brandon, I didn't say I finished engineering. I finished with a business degree, so I'm just a man with an expensive piece of paper on the wall. Our next fight, Matt, we have Miles Johns taking on John Castaneda. And I like the movement of the Southpaw in here. I think he's going to get tricky and bring the win back to Mini Go Wild. And Timberwolves.
I like John's ability to get on the inside and just use his overall boxing. Again, he is a little one-dimensional for someone who seems to have as much hype behind him as he does. It would be nice if he could add another little wrinkle to his game. And I understand he's a good grappler still, but it would be nice if he could come out there, start hammering calf kicks, body kicks. But I still like Miles Johns in this one. I think he'll be able to get on the inside. But last thing, I think this could be a great fight. I really do.
Miles Johns taking on a guy like, Casey Kenny or a rematch against Adrian Yanez. That'd be a lot of fun. And I see there's somewhere in the comment section, and I want to make sure I got it, talking about John Castaneda. I see another one of his former opponents on that FAC card tomorrow, looking for a fight, Jose Alde. And Dudu Dantas is on that card, too.
Could we get Davey Grant versus Miles Johns?
You could do that. The other one that's on that fight that I'm excited about, and I bet you the UFC signs him because he's got a tattoo of a you-know-what that goes up to his stomach, and it's the dumbest tattoo I've ever seen before. Chris Lencioni, he's on that FAC card, and he beat AJ Agazarm, and then he's out of Bellator, so now he's fighting with FAC, but I think you're going to see Chris Lencioni in the UFC, and he's a very fun fighter, so look out for that one, but we move on to our next fight. I've got Juicy J over Steven Peterson. Juicy J could get knocked out because that happens, but I think he's more skilled.
100%. You just broke down a Jimmy Manuwa fight pretty much. He could get knocked out, but I think he's going to win. No, I like Julian Rosa. Steven Peterson, just make weight or find a weight class that you won't miss. That's really all I have to say about this.
Sharif, the press conferences, I don't put a lot of stock in them, so I don't talk about them, but that's one of those tough ones. I'm not big into those. I don't have a whole lot more to add. Sometimes they're fun, but
yeah, like they're fun to sell the fight if there's personalities that you enjoy. Like I always liked watching a Michael Bisping press conference because it wasn't malicious. He wasn't going after anyone in a serious way. It was all pretty, lighthearted fun. So there's type of fighters I normally like. But like making these picks, wow, this press conference is now going to shift my perception on this fight.
But Sharif, they're a lot of fun if you like them. And he's saying just how wild. So Matt, Tresean Gore, Brian Battle, another one. Tresean Gore knocks out Brian Battle, or Brian Battle makes it gritty and maybe even submits Tresean Gore. I like Battle, And one of the things that stuck with me when I watched those fights on not Contender Series, The Ultimate Fighter, was how much Tiki Ghosn had to yell at Tresean Gore to do stuff. Because if he wasn't doing anything, Tresean Gore has really good pressure, but he doesn't do much. And that's the thing that bugs me. He's got speed, he's got the power, and if he brings it in against Battle, especially with his team, like he's going to have his own team. It's not Team Ortega or Team Volkanovski or any of that stuff. He's going to have his real team, but for me, I have Battle. But again, Battle's a lot slower, and he tends to get hit.
And for those reasons, I like Tresean Gore.
Yeah, exactly. So that one's fair.
It should be a great fight, though. Like, if this is the best version of what it could be, I think it's going to be great. Todd, I can put my hair in a man bun right now, no matter who wins.
No, but he did the super chat. So if Hermansson wins, you get the man bun. Brendan Allen taking on Sam Alvey. We'll go with Louisiana's own Brendan Allen.
If Sam Alvey wins this fight, like, this will be the biggest upset in UFC history to me. I'm going to let everyone know that right now. I'm not going to use the L word because we all know what happens when I use that.
Will they have to make an Ultimate Fighter season and rematch them?
They might have to. Could you imagine Sam Alvey and Brendan Allen as tough coaches? Yikes. Like, they've given Sam Alvey so many opportunities to stay in the UFC. It is kind of ridiculous at this point. So at some point, he has to prove to the fans that he belongs to stay. It's not just enough to prove to, okay, Dana White and I, we have a good thing going, so he's going to let me keep on fighting. Like, everywhere's on social media, and every person who actually watches MMA who I've talked to says this to me about this fight. They go, why is Sam Alvey getting another opportunity? It's wild to see some fighters get let go for reasons that have nothing to do with their wins and losses, and then you see somebody who has been so inconsistent in this stage of their career like Sam Alvey. I understand he's been willing to take short notice fights for the company, but to me, I don't think he's still at this level anymore, and I do expect Brendan Allen to win.
Alex Graham says, won't even answer your super chat.
What?
We did.
I'll put it in a bun, sure. If Jack Hermansson wins, I'll tweet out a picture of me in a bun, I guess.
Now, I smiled with my mouth open for long enough. Are they going to give me a desk job?
You might. No, you got to say something crazy and say you're going to bet the house on Sam Alvey.
Not a chance.
That's the only way to be Yanni the Greek, though.
Well, no.
I like Sam Alvey.
All right, Matt. So we move on. We have Shavkat Rakhmonov taking on Carlston Harris. This is another one. Great fight. And
Todd will do it for an episode.
Carlston Harris has a very, very good opportunity here to get the win. I have Shavkat Rakhmonov, but I will not fault a single person for taking Carlston Harris. And if he wins, I'll be excited. Like, I love this fight.
I think it's a really good fight, but again, I have to stick by what I said. I think Shavkat Rakhmonov is whatever top tier prospects you have in your head. Maybe there's only 5 guys on that list. Maybe there's only 10. Whatever the list is in your mind of these are the top level prospects in the UFC, I think Shavkat Rakhmonov deserves a spot in that list. That was my whole Khamzat Chimaev point. I really do think if Rakhmonov can... I don't even know. If he can keep it on the feet or keep it on the mat, he does have a pretty good chance of winning this fight. And that's the great thing about Rakhmonov. With most prospects, it's okay. If they can do this in their fight, they're going to have success, but you have to avoid these areas. Rakhmonov has shown the ability to get put into bad positions by specialists in what they specialize in and still work his way out of them, so I do like Rakhmonov.
And I do too. And the other thing about Carlston Harris, I think he could beat top 15 fighters right now. I do. I think both of these guys have very high ceilings. It's just a shame that we got him this late in his career. Puna Soriano's taking on Nick Maximov. It feels like Puna Soriano's been in the UFC forever at this point. And he's taking on a Maximov who just had his debut against Cody Brundage and won it. And it was a fight that happened. It did.
It definitely was. You bring that up about how long Puna's been in the UFC. I was doing the graphics for Derek Brunson. Derek Brunson's been in the UFC for almost a decade now. That's kind of wild to me. But I do think Punahele should be able to win this fight. It's weird because both guys have fairly good wrestling. I think that's fair to say. I know Soriano has more of a background in it, but I do think Maximov has some sort of X factors that will keep him around in the UFC for a little while. I know a win over Cody Brundage doesn't mean a lot to a lot of people. And, you know, like, if you beat Cody Brundage in your UFC debut, should you get a co-main event slot your next fight? Probably not, but that's the way the UFC is nowadays. I do think this will be a fun fight, but I do like Soriano.
It is it's a very telling thing when this is the co-main event. Both of us going with Soriano. And in the main event, both of us going with Sean Strickland.
But I'm like 60-40. I really am. Like, Jack Hermansson's so strange to me because every time I think he's going to lose, he decides to show up and have the performance of his life. And every time I think he's going to win, he looks strange and uncomfortable on the feet, gets dropped and controlled a lot. It's just, he's such a strange fighter to even point down like what he does very well and what he does very poorly. But I do like Strickland.
Now, I Am Jeff brings up a great point. Now, I Am Jeff, do you, have you seen 21 Jump Street? Are you all about that life? Do you introduce yourself as... my name's Jeff, or do you just go, I am Jeff? and then you have to refer to yourself as Jeff. It's just like the Jimmy. Jimmy shoots, Jimmy scores. Now, Matt, when we look at this, that is kind of telling, actually. I would say it's probably because he's ranked higher, and if you put Sean Strickland on the poster, things could get a little freaky.
Do you think this is Hermansson's kind of last chance to stick around in the top 15? Because I really do.
No, it's his last chance to stay a contender, though.
Fair enough. The way I've looked at it, though, is Hermansson struggled with power punchers at this division. We know that. He struggles to absorb power on the feet. We've never seen him struggle with heavy volume and sort of power. Like, if he struggles with this, then I'm going to be asking myself, okay, what level of striker can Jack Hermansson beat on the feet? Because up until this point, if you have low volume, he will be able to outvolume you himself and then get his own takedowns. It's just, I worry that, okay, if we do see him lose to Sean Strickland, will the book completely be out on Jack Hermansson then as, oh, he's just a fighter where if he takes you down, then you're in trouble, but if you can just keep it on the feet, you can avoid a lot of the danger.
Probably it's that, brother. I don't know which one it is, Jeff. Well, tell me, Jeff. But yeah, when it does come down to this one, it's odd. I mean, they can both strike. Hermansson's one of those guys, we talk about them. Long with pop at the end of his shots.
And he like slaps with his wrist. It's an odd way of throwing punches.
It's like when you watch that fight in the parking lot in the asphalt in high school, there's one of those guys and he's just going to come across and flick the end of his wrist and then you're done. But yeah, when it comes to this one, I do have Strickland, but like you said, it's a 60-40 type of thing. And if you like Hermansson as the underdog, like you know Todd does, then that's totally fair. Canadians for the Cup saying Ladd and Dumont was a main at one point.
That's a very good point.
That's true. I mean,
that was tough.
I was going back through the graphics. Ketlin Vieira, Misha Tate, remember that? That was the main event not that long ago.
Michelle Rodriguez versus Watterson at like 125. Marina Rodriguez.
And yeah, I mean a co-main event of Andre Arlovsky, Carlos Felipe.
But here's the good news, Craig.
And Jake Collier, Chase Sherman.
Going into next week, we have UFC 271. And not only is the main event phenomenal, you have Israel Adesanya versus Robert Whittaker 2 for the middleweight title.
Danny's going to like it in the comment section. From Australia, you got Jacob Malkoun and Tai Tuivasa on that card.
And I was going to say, Whittaker. The co-main and the whole main card, like really, that whole pay-per-view card is surprisingly deep. Coming off the last pay-per-view with Francis Ngannou at the top and Brandon Moreno, there was star power at the top of the card, but it lacked the depth that honestly some Fight Night cards do. So I'm really excited with next week's card and just it being so deep top to bottom.
Yeah, I mean, you got the stable of teammates. You've got, who is it? Yeah, Blood Diamond making his debut. Jacob Malkoun's on the card, so smallish Whittaker, even though they're in the same division. Blood Diamond with some kickboxing. Did you look at the record? 52-17 is his kickboxing
That's
record.
Really good.
52-17. I think
Ray Cefo's like the best ever, and he's like 130.
Well, that's pretty cool. But yeah, when it comes down to that card, I really am excited about it. We're going to have that comic book look to the thumbnail. I think it's going to be a great time. Jacob Phillips saying Blood Diamond is a lock. If you haven't told or haven't realized it already, I'm not picking Blood Diamond in that fight. But I do really like that card, and it is a fun one, and there's a lot more ranked fighters on that one than there normally is. There's 9 plus a champion. So it's going to be a great time, and I want to thank everybody for tuning in and making this so much fun to start this year off. I mean, we've reached the 30K. Next one is 50. We get to 50K by the end of the year. I'll get Shred City and get an amateur fight if we get to 50K. How about that?
I'll get it. Craig, you're... Okay, sure.
It's going to happen. We're going to make that one happen. If we get to 50K, we'll make that happen. I guarantee it. So, Matt, I can't wait for it. I'm looking forward to the card coming up next weekend. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. And as we always say, let's get into it. Woo!
A last look at the big card. Be sure to head into the chat and have your say. Let's get into it. And join in Fight Night Picks ? Kicks.